the 76ers are playing arguably some of their best basketball of the year again. Won 9 of their last 10. They're now only 3 games back of the 1 seed and only a half game back of the Celtics, who are still playing good basketball, but not their best basketball over the last 15 or 20 games or so. I know we've talked a few weeks ago about the 76ers being a tier or so below the Celtics and the Bucks. I'll start with you, Tyrik. Do you still think they are that tier below the Bucks and the Celtics, or are they starting to become a little bit more comparable with those two powerhouses in the East?
I think they made more of a case, but I would still consider them a tier below because I still have so many questions about James Harden in the playoffs. He's had an amazing season, all NBA caliber, but he's going to have to elevate his game to a new level in the postseason. But in this stretch, man, Joel Embiid has been crazy. I think, he's making it known like he wants that MVP. He's really trying to solidify that. He's been playing some of the best, probably the best basketball of his career, like since the calendar's turn. Like he's been getting stronger as the season's gone on, which we haven't been able to say about him, in the last couple of seasons. It seems like it was always an injury that would come at the wrong time, where he would just kind of slow down just a little bit. But he's been getting better and better as the season goes on. I know they have a tough schedule to finish the year, so if they can, maybe go like 6-3 or, whatever in that stretch, that would really bode well for them going into the postseason. But to answer your question, I would still consider them a tier below Boston and Milwaukee, but it's not by much. I still stand on what I say. Like, if things go right for them, they could make it to the NBA Finals this season.
I agree completely, actually, with pretty much everything you said. Because for me, and I've always been this guy for over a year now that we've done this podcast, that I value what you've done in the postseason so much. And James Harden, for his career, we know there is like it's like legendary folds. Like it's literally like the stuff of like NBA lore that James Harden tends to not raise his game. If anything, his game gets lowered in the postseason. So we need to see that. We got the whole Doc Rivers situation. Notoriously, it's stuff of legend that he always folds in these postseason situations. So we need to see that. And then Joel Embiid, one of these biggest narratives around him now is like, why you care so much about the MVP? You should care about getting out of the second round. You ain't been out of there yet. And it's like, you look at the other two teams we're trying to put them on a tier with, and it's a team with a ring, and it's a team that was 2 games away from one. And so from that perspective, it's like, they've looked really good recently. However, I've seen both of these players probably not this good together, but definitely on their own, and they've looked good for stretches together already. I need to see this from them in the postseason to really buy in and really believe in it, because I just can't buy in again and get disappointed again for the gazillionth year in a row. I just feel like that would be an unwise decision to make. The only guy on this team that I'm super confident will step his game up in the playoffs is Tyrese Maxey. And probably I would say PJ Tucker as well, but we kind of know what PJ always does. That's it's not going to jump out on like the box score, but
yeah.
He's a guy who he'll show his worth there. But as far as like a guy who you're going to see like, oh, he's like taking over the game right now. If Tyrese Maxey plays like he did last year, I think he's got that in him. But everybody else on this roster, prove it to me.
Yeah, definitely feel the same way about a lot of what you guys said. The other thing I want to point on too is Harden has to be so good for this team, because not that the Celtics and Bucks have a ton of secondary shot creators and shot makers outside of their top guys, but like outside of Tatum, outside of Brown, you have Malcolm Brogdon, and you have a ton of guys who are going to hit threes, at least more so than the 76ers have. For the Bucks, you have Chris Middleton, and then you still have Drew Holiday right next to him. Like there's at least comparable options there for perimeter options. Outside of Harden and Maxey for the 76ers, there's not really much there. I mean, if you want to start relying on Shake Milton to start creating buckets for you in the playoffs, maybe, but that's not something you want to depend on. And D'Anthony Melton's been great this season, but he's definitely more of a catch and shoot guy than someone who's going to be out hitting pull-up middies in a playoff series. So Harden has to be that guy come playoff time, because of the fact that they don't have that many options to fill the role that he plays. And like you guys alluded to, especially Gabe, like he's had his moments in the playoffs, some good, some bad. And there's not any room for him to be mediocre or just average to his standards for the 76ers team to beat a Bucks team, to beat a Celtics team. So even though they've played great as of recently, they look very good. I think they're going to give a very tough series to either of those teams, but I would still find it hard to put them on that tier with those two elite teams in the East.
And it's no knock against them. It's just that's how good those two teams have been at points this season. Now, we've seen it from the 76ers recently. Like I said, if they can finish the season, how they've been playing, it'll bode well. And whether they face Boston or Milwaukee in that second round, if they make it that far, that's going to be a tough series, like no matter who they play. Because I think they match up well with either team. It's just a matter of, breaking through that wall finally, just getting over that hump. Like Gabe mentioned, like Embiid's never seen the conference finals. And, he's getting to that point where it's like, kind of got to break through that wall and at least give yourself an opportunity to be a champion, because we know that's what he wants. He wants to win. And we know that's what Philly sports teams always want. They want to win. So, definitely still a lot of questions, though. James Harden is notorious for, slowing down in the playoffs, which is probably easy to do so when you're averaging, 35 points a game in the regular season. And then it's like, oh, he's only averaging 29 in the postseason. But I do get, he does have, those just historic moments, just where he's not shooting the ball in the game 6 when they need it the most, or he's just throwing 10 turnovers in an elimination game. He does have those moments that just look very bad. So now it's all the room in the world for him to step up, because he's not having that prolific scoring season. So if he just raises his offensive aggressiveness a little bit in the postseason, that could really help them. But like you mentioned, Devin, they do lack those just other options on the perimeter outside of their backcourt, which most other teams that we consider contenders, they had that. They have perimeter guys that can go get buckets and go create offense. They're one of the teams that really don't have that outside of those two guys with Maxey and Harden.
Definitely going to be an interesting spot for them. It'd be nice to see Embiid finally have a little bit more success come this postseason, and they'll have a shot, but like we said, no knock on them, but those Bucks and Celtics teams are just really well built. And like you said, Gabe, they got the playoff success that the 76ers just haven't had.
Not proven, man. If they go out there and they hoop in the playoffs and they score some crazy upset, I'm here for it, man. I will be thoroughly entertained. I love watching Joel Embiid play. His footwork, even – I know everybody hates, oh, you're too big to be going down to the floor like that. I love it, man. I love it. I'm a fan of players who play abnormally, if that makes sense. It's a very unique thing. I like it.
Yeah. I don't hate drawing fouls, because obviously I'm a James Harden guy, so I don't hate that. That's part of basketball. I just hate how he really puts his body on the line to do so. Bro, you already got injury issues. We just don't need to see you hitting the floor 5 times a game, man, or 5 times in the first quarter. We don't need to see that, man.
It's for the love of the game, man. It's for the love of the game.
I guess. I want to pose a quick question. So, I don't know if we've already discussed this before. I don't think we have. But say, for instance, they get to the second round. Just say they face, either Milwaukee or Boston, whoever it is. And just say it's a hard-fought 7-game series that comes down to the wire, and they just barely lose it. Is that enough to say it's a failure of a season? Because they're probably losing to a team that people expected them to lose to, but they took them to the wire. Would that be a failure?
Here's how I'd word it. I don't think it would be disappointing, but I think it would be a failure.
Okay.
I think they'd be expected to lose, but ultimately they have aspirations to do more than that. So for them, it's disappointing. But I can't be mad at the 76ers if they lose to Boston or Milwaukee, because they're just better, in my opinion.
Yeah, for me, it's you went out, you traded one of your franchise pieces for James Harden. Joel Embiid, you got him in his prime right now, and especially with big men with injury history, you never know how long that's going to last. You gave Tobias Harris a bag. You brought in PJ Tucker, which we know what his intentions are. He's a guy who you bring on the roster when you want to start contending and really going for a title. Everything they've done in the past couple of years is to get them to a point where they can contend. And at this point in this NBA, at a certain point, if you want to win a title, you got to just beat those teams. It's really that simple. There's not going to be a year where it's oh, yeah, this team was expected to beat us this year, so we got next year. it's not like the Bucks and the Celtics are some old ass teams that are about to like disappear. Like they're gonna be here, and so yeah, I do think it is failure if you don't beat these teams. Even if you're the underdog, the Celtics and the Sixers got like the same record. Like they're a half game apart with the same amount of losses. If they both went out for the rest of the season, they have the same record. The Bucks, 2.5 games better. It's not like you're like a 45-win team facing the 73-9 Warriors. Like we said, oh, they've made a strong case to be in the same tier, but they're not there because they haven't proven it, which means they have the talent to go and compete with those teams. They just haven't done it. So at this point, it's like we need to start getting it done, and we need to get it done soon. If not this season, like next season. Because like I said before,
next season.
You went out, you got James Harden. James Harden ain't getting younger. He's been in the league since 2009. He's about to be in like, what, year 15? Joel Embiid, who knows? You never know. There's always that fear with him. I don't want to get too repetitive, but you got to start getting some results.
And Harden slated to be a free agent. So, like, there's a lot of variables that could – like, if Harden walks and they don't get it done this year, then that's definitely a failure of a season and an experiment. But if Harden resigns, then you give yourself another chance. Embiid, hopefully, seems like he's just continuing to get better. You know, he's playing the best basketball of his life. So they'll still have a chance. But, yeah, I see what both of you guys are saying for sure. I just wanted to pose that question.
For sure. I think the other thing I want to mention, too, is we're at a bit of a point where I don't mind it in some situations, but there's a lot of conversations now where you either need to be rebuilding or you need to be contending. And there isn't really much room for middle ground. And where you are isn't as important as what your direction is. Like, the Magic weren't truly rebuilding this year. Like, they're a 30-win team. They're not with the bottom of the league. They have a direction. They're good. Same thing for a team like OKC, who are 36-36 this year. Everyone loves OKC this year because they finally have a direction. The most important thing is the direction. If you're still young and you're in the middle of the pack, but you're improving, you have young guys who are growing, nothing wrong with that. Philly are past that point now. Joel's 29. They have Harden. Tobias Harris is in there as a vet. They've got PJ Tucker in, as you mentioned. This is kind of the era where your star in Joel is in his late 20s to early 30s. This is winning time. So this is the point in time now where you're either contenders or you're rebuilding. And so these next year or two, depending on what happens next year with Harden, kind of defines that window. But these next couple of years, those decisions kind of have to get made where can you finally show come playoff time that you are on the level of these elite teams and can beat them, or are you not? That's just the point they're at now. And I don't want to start hypothesizing, oh, if they lose in the second round this year, Embiid's going to get traded. But I don't think we're in that type of scenario. I don't think we're anywhere near that point yet. But Embiid is 29. They've been around the playoffs for a while now. It's time for them to start to make a push further than the second round.
It's crazy to think he's 29 because we've gotten like 7 years of NBA basketball from him. So, like, it's getting to that time for sure. Like, maybe not right away, but within the next couple of years, if they don't see those results, then yeah, for sure.
His career's been an anomaly, man. I remember him being like a third, fourth year rookie. Crazy times to think like that does not feel like it was like 6-7 years ago, but it was.
I remember watching his first game against OKC. Like, yeah, that doesn't feel like it was as long ago as it was, but here we are.
His first game was against MVP Westbrook. It's crazy.
Yeah, you don't remember dude was in the crowd. That was the game where the Sixers fan was flipping off Westbrook in like the first quarter.
Does ring a bell.
That Sixers team was bad. They had like, I think Sergio Rodriguez was their starting point guard. I think that was his name.
That was the year that
this was some dark days.
It was like, because I think Brogdon got the rookie of the year, but after Embiid went out, people were saying like, oh, it's a show be Embiid. And then there was like that late push for like Dario Saric to win it because after Embiid played like 30 games, so the rest of the season, Dario Saric was like the guy on Philly because Ben Simmons was like there, but he wasn't there yet because he was injured.
Yeah, Ben Simmons didn't play his actual rookie year.
Right. So yeah, he didn't play. So yeah, Saric was like the guy because their number one pick wasn't playing.
Forgot about Sarge, man.
So is he still? Did he get shipped out of Phoenix?
I think he took a. Yeah, he's in OKC now. I think.
That's what I thought. Yeah. I know he's been moved a couple of times.
I think
he got moved in the Baisley deal.
Got you.
I think he took a couple years to even make his NBA debut too. I think they drafted him like.
Yeah.
I think they drafted him in like 13 or 14 or something like that.
Might be
they just had a thing with that, I guess. Right. I mean, technically, Markelle Fultz played as a rookie, but like barely.
Barely. He played like 6 games or something like that.
It was.
Yeah.
That's still
2014 draft for Sarge.
I'm happy they finally got
17 as his rookie season.
Unfair. Unfair advantage, man, to the 19-year-old kids.
Dude, there was like there had to be something going on in that training room, man. Ain't no way.
Bro, I'm standing on this, man. Like a study has to be done, man. A study has to be done on what happened to Markelle Fultz, bro.
The one guy that they drafted super high. There was more than one guy they drafted super high, but the one guy they drafted super high that like played was like Jahlil Okafor. He not pan out.
He got hurt too. He got hurt his rookie year. I think Nerlens Noel came in hurt.
Yeah, Noel was always a bit of an injury concern.
Yeah, I think he tore his ACL like end of his college career or
something like that. Yeah.
Wait, now I got to look at Jahlil Okafor. At least Jahlil Okafor played 53 games his first year in the league.
I didn't even think it was that much.
Yeah, 53 like for a Sixers rookie is like, that's
he came in. Good. He came in day one. It was the number one option. Day one.
Yeah.
On those teams, bro.
For real. For real.
That was back like.
Was that
Robert Covington era, man?
Was that post Evan Turner? I think it was. I think they traded him like the year before.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Evan Turner was averaging like 20 on those just bad Sixer teams, and they traded him.
Yeah. Yeah, the most common starters were Nerlens Noel, Jeremy Grant, Ish Smith, Robert Covington, and Jahlil Okafor, followed by Isaiah Cannon and Nick Stauskas.
Isaiah Cannon, Murray State legend, man.
If you show people this team today, they wouldn't say it's a good team, but
they had some talent.
Terrible.
Like, they had some talent. They just didn't get talented in Philly. They got talented when they left.
I was gonna say, like, you got Christian Wood and Jeremy Grant. That's not it. I mean,
Rashawn Holmes hanging out down there too.
Rashawn Holmes,
is that the worst duo in the league?
No,
I don't know if that's the worst duo in the league.
I know y'all remember the Tony Roten days, man. Tony Roten was averaging like 20.
Tony Roten was going crazy.
He was averaging 20 and then just never was seen on the NBA floor again.
Yeah.
Elton Brand being on that roster is crazy. Elton Brand, that's just the most random player to be on the worst team of all time.
That Philly team was a great example of showing how many guys could average 20 in the right situation.